Okay, everybody, are you guys ready? Okay.
Let's go.
Okay. Well, welcome to this week's Carmen Line Cafe. This is an Orbital Velocity podcast where we have casual conversations about space flight, mostly human space flight. These aren't always going to be hard-hitting topics. Sometimes they will be, sometimes they won't be, but it's meant to be your kind of weekly dose of space nerd talk. I want to welcome Melody Rose here.
Hello.
You can find her on her socials on Twitch, Twitter, Threads, YouTube, Little Nerd TV. Is that correct?
Yep, you got it. Little
Okay.
Nerd TV.
And of course, you can find me on Twitter and Threads or X or whatever we're calling it nowadays at the Space Writer. And before we go ahead and begin, be sure to like this video, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There we go. Do you have any opening words?
That was it. You did good.
I did good. Yay. I'm going to get this intro down at some point.
You got it.
Yep. So going to get right into this week. What a week. We have a couple of things we want to talk about. Specifically, of course, the thumbnail for those clicking on is NASA selected a company to make the USDV, or the United States deorbit vehicle, and that, of course, is SpaceX, and we'll get into that more in a bit. The other thing we're going to talk about is the space. Oh gosh, when did that happen? Was that on Monday? Yeah, it was Monday. Monday, they had to cancel abort the spacewalk. Technically, the spacewalk had already started because of a umbilical leak, and I think it was a water coolant umbilical. And I feel like this topic we can talk about a little bit, the suits showing their age and so on and so forth, what happened there. And tangentially, we have some news about the commercial space suits meant to replace NASA's very much aging extravehicular mobility units. And the third thing I want to talk about is, of course, any residual Starliner updates. And boy, there was a lot, especially in today's, was it yesterday's? Yes, what is today's? Today's Saturday. So Friday's teleconference with NASA and members of the media, and it got a little testy. So, so yeah, that's kind of the rundown of today's episode. And if you guys have any questions in the chat, feel free to do it. Both of us are watching the chat, and we'll try to answer questions if you've got them. So starting off, we have got the headline news for the week for this podcast is NASA's what am I reading here? NASA's selection of the US deorbit vehicle was SpaceX. Kind of not surprising. The idea is at the end of the space station's useful life, which right now is planned for 2030. We don't want it to just sit up there and be uncontrolled. Think Skylab back in the day after they left Skylab in 1974. It was meant to be revisited by the space shuttle when it came online, but space shuttle got delayed until 1981, and famously, Skylab re-entered uncontrolled in July, I think, sometime in 1979, and actually pieces of it rained down over southwest Australia. And that was kind of a, I think they actually have a piece of it that they found in. Fun story. I think there was an American news agency had said they would, oh gosh, what was the reward? They would give a reward to anybody that came to their studio and brought them a piece of Skylab. And some kid in Australia found a piece, and they flew all the way to the news agency and presented the piece. And I don't remember what the reward was, but it was a big embarrassment for NASA.
Oh my.
And they obviously don't want that to happen again, for more than just embarrassment reasons. It's a lot bigger. The International Space Station is a lot bigger than Skylab. It's also a lot older than Skylab. Skylab, Skylab was probably under 100 tons.
Oh wow.
Less than 100 tons. Somebody in the comments or the chats can let me know right around where it's at. It was lifted by Skylab, so it had to. It lifted by the Saturn V, so it had to be within its weight capacity. But the other vehicles, and of course that was an uncontrolled reentry, 100 tons breaking up. Most of it burned up. The other big vehicles to have uncontrolled reentries, or not just reentries in general, the largest vehicles would be the Mir space station, which we'll talk about that in a bit, which which will be similar to how the International Space Station will go. It was deorbited in March of 2001, so 2001, over the South Pacific Ocean, which is the safest place to deorbit any spacecraft because there's a point down there called Point Nemo, and it's basically where there's there's basically no sea traffic at all over there. It's so if you think about the center of the Pacific Ocean, go all the way down to not as far as Antarctica, but it's right around that area. If that kind of has a picture in your head where that's at.
Oh, wow. Finding Nemo.
Maybe Nemo lives there. Probably not. Actually, Nemo lived off of the Great Barrier Reef, but
That's true. What was
not
it called
far.
again?
What?
That center location you were talking about?
Point Nemo.
Point
I don't know.
Nemo.
Yeah, I don't know why it got that name. Somebody can explain
That's
that.
cute.
Yeah, it's not named after the fish.
Finding Nemo.
But the what was I gonna say? Anyway, so that's where Mir was deorbited, and I can pull up video for that because somebody did catch a video of that back in the day. Oh gosh, that was more than 20 years ago now. Wow. Anyway, well, it feels like a long time ago.
I know, it feels like a long time.
Yeah, I'm in my 30s, I'm mid 30s. I feel like I'm getting old. I know I'm not old, but it just feels that way sometimes. But the only other large vehicle to re-enter, but this time uncontrolled, sadly, was the Space Shuttle Columbia, which was about 100 tons as well. It may have been less than 100 tons, but right around there. And that, of course, rained all over Texas, and thankfully, there was no serious damage to property, or there was some damage to property, but no serious damage to people on the ground, life or property. It could have been a lot worse, but the International Space Station is more than 4 times the size of those vehicles. It is by far the largest thing ever built in space at about 420 metric tons. It's larger than even the Chinese space station, which is a little over 100 tons. So it's big, and if we just left right now and just let it be, it would be on the ground or re-entering the atmosphere within 1 to 3 years, depending on the atmospheric conditions. So it's constantly getting reboosted to maintain an orbit of around 420 kilometers. So when the time comes, ideally, when we have commercial space stations replacing the capability of the International Space Station, I think that's kind of key here. That is when we'll want to start descoping and leaving the space station. We can't really leave it uncrewed for very long. It's not designed to be uncrewed for very long. It's very much a manually operated, for lack of a better term, vehicle. Not like the Lunar Gateway, which is expected to be uncrewed for most of its life, except for 30 days or 20 days when you have visiting crews for Artemis missions when it gets up there. But
does the U.S. only have one station in orbit?
Yes, right now it is just the International Space Station, along with the other international partners of the European Space Agency, the Canadian Space Agency. Why am I drawing a blank here? The Russian Space Agency and the Japanese Space Agency. So those are the 5 partner agencies that operate collectively the space station, and all of them have to agree on even mission extensions for the most part. Russia's agreed. Really cool. Yeah, Russia's agreed through at least 2028. They'll probably keep pushing it because they don't have anything else going on right now. That's a whole nother topic for another day. But you need to actually start the process of getting a deorbit vehicle now, because it's going to take time. And SpaceX, getting into the meat of the story here, SpaceX was awarded a contract to do that for 800. The news press release says the single award contract has a potential value of $843 million. And it said the launch service for the deorbit vehicle will be a future procurement. It'll probably launch on a Falcon Heavy. Let's not kid ourselves. But so yeah, that's really all we know about it. The cost, almost $1 billion, up to, $1 billion. It might be cheaper than that. Um, and it'll probably be based off of a teleconference that NASA had yesterday. It'll be based on Dragon heritage. What that means, we don't 100% know. It could be based on the current Crew Dragon with a modified trunk. It could be based on what SpaceX is developing for the Lunar Gateway, which is called Dragon XL, which is a cargo ship that will resupply the Lunar Gateway. I'm thinking it's probably going to be a combination of both.
Do we know what it's gonna look like?
What, Dragon XL?
The deorbit vehicle.
No. But I can show you
No.
what the Dragon XL looks like. Let me pull up it on my screen. I can, once again, try not to mess that up too much.
Yeah.
Where is it actually? That's the wrong one. It's this one, I think. Yep, there we go. So hopefully you'll see that, and I'll full screen it for people.
Oh, that's cool.
So yeah, that is Dragon XL. It's basically, trying to figure out the best way to describe it. Just kind of a minimal pressurized component, and it won't be reusable, I don't think. It's just
That's so tiny.
Basically kind of it's the same diameter as Dragon, just not a blunt shape with a heat shield, so it's just tubular. And then the very back is propulsion. So that propulsion is probably what they're going to be using to get to the Lunar Gateway, for example. My guess is it'll look similar to that because it'll pair well with the existing contract with the Lunar Gateway. So why not double dip on that and make it cheaper for everybody? But we don't know for sure. That's just my educated speculation, for lack of a better phrase. So you can imagine this thing docking. Well, I don't know where they would dock it, because if they dock it to the back of the Russian space station, they won't be using the same docking port. It'll be a probe-drogue system. We talked about that off the air last time. But let me go back here and turn this off here. Stop streaming. Actually, can I? Yep. There we go. So there's a couple of different docking ports it could use. It could even be a berthing port, for all we know. They could berth it to the space station, which basically uses the common berthing mechanism. So it'll get close to the space station, and the robotic arm will grab it and put it on to a docking port or a berthing port.
That's so cool.
If they do that, I wouldn't be surprised if it goes in the same spot that the Cygnus cargo ship currently berths at, which is the Earth-facing port of the Unity module, which is kind of right in the middle on the International Space Station, facing down. So if that were the case, they would probably have to reorient the space station and make sure they have structures positioned in such a way it's not going to snap off when they do the deorbit burn. I imagine the thrust is not going to be very high. It's probably going to be a series of burns and very long burns.
Nice.
But now I'm getting very much into speculation mode here. But
it's always fun.
Yeah. And actually, NASA released a white paper, because people have always asked, well, why not just send this thing into a higher orbit for future generations? You know, it would make sense, Well, they did do a study on that. And basically, that comes down, first of all, you're going to need fuel to get it up to a higher orbit anyway. They have a whole chart here. Like, if you wanted it to be safe from deorbit uncontrolled for, well, I'm just pulling up a number on their sheet here. Actually, I'll just pull up the sheet. Why not?
Let's go.
For those just listening, you'll just have to listen. But this will obviously be a video, or it is a video, so you can watch it. If people are watching it on a podcast, they might not be able to see it. But if they watch it on YouTube podcast, they can see the video and listen to it, so on and so forth.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
If you didn't love Derek, you do now.
I can be detail oriented. Okay, so everybody can see this. So I'm just going to go up to 1,000 years deorbit burn. Deorbit, not deorbit burn. If you want it to go up to 1,000 years uncontrolled, it'll stay up there forever. So you need to get it up to like 830 kilometers, somewhere around there. That's going to cost you about I'm going to round up to the highest number, about 250 meters per second of delta V, which for the size of the International Space Station equates to about almost 40,000 kilograms, or 40 metric tons. of propellant to get it up there. That's a lot. And who knows how long it would take to get there. That's challenge number
The
one.
engines come in.
Yeah. Now, a controlled deorbit is still going to cost you about 9,000 kilograms. But the atmosphere will do the rest of the work. The problem here
That's
is we're looking at that 1,000 years, or that's about 800 miles, kilometers up. I gotta switch to metric here. They also did a debris analysis here. So you can see this chart. You have two different peaks of a lot of debris accumulation in these orbits. And that high orbit of 1,000, I think 1,000 years, so 800 miles, 800 to 900 miles, is right there near the top of the peak. And what they said on that population source here, I'm trying to figure out what it was in particular. I think, yeah, let me read this here. I'll zoom in. Basically, the debris flux nominated, I don't know what this means here. Try to remember what they said exactly. Point is, the risk of being hit by a piece of debris exponentially goes up. And you wouldn't even have, that's assuming you don't have, if you have people there, which this space station isn't designed to operate solo, so you have that problem. And then, so you have to keep sending logistics up there while you're still operating it, even if it's in a caretaker mode. And then you have the possibility, the very real likelihood of it just being ripped to shreds by orbital debris over the course of several years. And then you just have a bunch more debris from a 400-ton object just being ripped to shreds. Now you really have a Kessler syndrome issue going on here. So, and even if you go really high up, you still have all those potentials, unless you went up to 2,000 kilometers. 2,000 kilometers is when you would start to get comparable to where the ISS is now. And 2,000 kilometers, going back to our handy dandy chart here, is that's basically a Saturn V worth of fuel, a payload capacity worth of fuel, or larger than that. So yeah, could Starship do it? Probably. But then you also have to think about other logistics of Starship's way too overpowered for that. It would possibly rip the space station apart, so on and so forth, blah, 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 blah. So changing it, putting it up to a higher orbit, can't do that. It's just not really feasible. You could also try to take it down piece by piece, but that is going to be just as hard as it was to put together and expensive. So really,
well, that's interesting.
Yeah. So really, the only reasonable thing to do at the end of its life when we're done with it, the key is when we're done with it, unfortunately, is to destroy it. And it'll be a very sad day when that happens. Right now, that's targeted for around 2030, 2031. If commercial crew like Axiom Space Station is not ready by then, I would not put it past NASA and international partners to certify it for a few more years. But the longer you go, the more likely things are going to break. These oldest pieces of the space station were launched in 1998 and 2000. And well, by that time, you're over 30 years old. And that's a lot of heat cycles, hot, cold, radiation. Things will start to break that you can't really easily replace. And you want, once, if it comes to that point, you're already almost too late. So you kind of got to destroy it before it's too risky to destroy it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this off here. Stop streaming that. Okay. So yeah, what do you think about all that?
That's cool. They have a plan in place for the ISS and future plans. I, as just a regular viewer, didn't know about any of that, so it's really cool.
Well, it will have a re-entry path, entry track, similar to that. Actually, I might just have some fun here. Hopefully that doesn't get any copyright strikes or anything. That's too long. That's an hour. Where is it? Here is it. Actually, I'll have to pause and then I will stop it. Then I'll share my screen once again. Hopefully this bloop, bloop, bloop doesn't get annoying for people. I wonder if I can turn that audio off.
Boop, boop.
Yeah. So there's that. There's reentry of Mir in March of 2001. I think
Mhm.
this is from Fiji. It might be New
Ooh,
Zealand, but I think it's from Fiji. Um, yeah.
always wanted to
So,
go to Fiji.
so this is a 100-ton vehicle burning up in the
Mhm.
atmosphere. Imagine a 450-ton vehicle doing the same thing. Whew. Yeah. And there's that. And then going back here,
Oh
you got
wow.
here is a. I don't want. I don't think this has got sound. As maybe it does. Yep, it's got sound. I'm gonna turn the sound off. Specifically, I want to show the animated version that they made of approximately what happened when Mir deorbited. Mir
Mhm.
deorbited in a couple of different
Wonderful.
phases with, I think it was 2 or 3 progress burns, slowing it down. And then it came, once it hit the upper atmosphere, the first things to fall off of those solar panels. And it'll be very similar for the ISS. And then once it gets a little
Wow.
lower, all those connecting parts for the modules will start breaking
Mhm.
apart. And then it'll just be a bunch of little bitty balls. Well, big
No
balls.
way.
Um,
No way.
that was a really bad animation. Yeah, that was. Hang on, there's an actual better animation.
That's
That was very
I get the vision.
Armageddon like. There's an actual reentry animation here. Mirror reentry animation. Ah, there it is. Come on.
I've never thought about deorbiting the ISS, so
I know it's something that we've been thinking about for a decade or more now. And
it's insane.
when the Mir space station was deorbited, it was a huge loss of national pride
Mhm.
for the Russian people.
Mhm.
And I imagine it'll be similar for the Western nations as well. And so here's the animation here, and then let me full screen that. So yeah, it'll start spinning. Probably everything's uncontrolled at this point. Once it's at
Mhm.
this stage, and then they'll just start melting and then falling off.
To know that it's so controlled right now to not do that is
Yeah, yeah,
wow.
yeah. There is somebody did make an animation for. I'm gonna stop sharing this for
Mhm.
the um, International Space Station. I forget who it was, but of course it's his own animation. I'm not going to pull that up because
Mhm.
it's not mine. I'm sure there will be somebody making one in the next couple of years, but for me, it's a little sad personally. I have
Mhm. It's
been.
sad.
I think I mentioned on one of these streams that my first launch I ever saw on TV was the Space Shuttle Discovery launching for STS-95. But the second launch, I don't think I saw the launch. I may have saw a replay of the launch, or definitely saw the landing of STS-88 a few months later in December, which was the first
Mhm.
ISS assembly mission. So I have
Oh wow.
been, and I was in, gosh, what 1998? I would have been. How old would I have been?
Like
uh,
five, six
well,
or
no. I would
seven.
have been. I was born in
Or
'88, so that would have been 10.
oh,
So
okay. Oh, okay, yeah, a little
roughly
older.
10. Roughly 10. So old enough to understand what's going on, but not old enough to understand all the details. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, or understand all the reasons behind it. But yeah, so I have been paying attention to space station assembly since I've been into space. So it's kind of been my whole life, if that makes
It's your
sense.
baby.
It's well,
Mhm.
it's a lot of people's baby. Let's be fair, but
Well,
hundreds of
yeah,
thousands
but
of
I mean,
people. But for me, it
mhm.
holds a special place in my heart. Um,
Absolutely.
it's kind of like it's. I mean, it's not a one-to-one analogy, but it's kind of like the Apollo generation
Mhm.
and when they ended the moon program and all that, and all the heartbreak that brought about. And likewise, I felt a similar way at the end of the space shuttle program. A lot of heartbreak, but understanding future new greater things are to come. But
Absolutely.
now we can all be adopted into the Artemis generation, and it's all going to be great. But There,
Have
there's
your
still,
time of mourning,
yeah,
though.
you have the time of mourning, and I really personally want to actually fly. It'll just depend exactly what the orbit track is. We won't know for until it's within probably the last year of
Mhm.
whether it's going to exactly where it's going to come in. We know it'll be coming in over Oceania, and it'll land roughly in or disintegrate roughly over Point Nemo. Whether that means the best place to go see is northern New Zealand or somewhere in Fiji, I don't know, but I kind of want to save money and go. I think that would be
Absolutely.
a fitting end to go see something that's been a part of
Yeah.
my life and just watch it
Yeah, take
go.
your wife,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
your
absolutely. Well,
doggy.
yes. I'm not going to take the dog.
Maybe.
that's that's a lot. But
I know.
what'll be interesting is, especially if I can get a charter a boat, which would get more expensive.
Mhm.
But even if it's just a few miles off the coast of either New Zealand or Fiji, I would be curious to know if we hear multiple sonic booms just going off all over the
Yeah.
place because of all the pieces just slowing down.
That's what I was wondering when I
Yeah,
was watching
actually,
the little animation.
yeah. When Columbia re-entered and broke apart over South Texas, one of the first things people heard before they realized what was going on was a bunch of booms, bang, 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 boom,
Mhm.
boom, boom, like there were fireworks going off or some sort of massive explosion. In fact, a lot of people thought there was an explosion and called in the police to report explosions, and it was just
Oh,
really
wow.
confusing for a few minutes. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I'd be
yeah,
confused.
yeah, and then it turned out it was way worse. Um,
Oh,
but
no.
well, sorry, as far as what happened, it wasn't. It was a tragedy. Columbia,
Mm.
um, like a lot of people, just gets burned into my mind. So anyway, uh, onward. So yeah, that's the deorbit vehicle. Is there any other questions people have in the chat, or do you have about it?
Um, that was pretty much it for me. It was really cool learning about it. Oh,
Okay. Um,
let's see.
oh, one other
Chat.
interesting thing about it is it's not going to be a commercial vehicle in the sense of like Crew Dragon or Cygnus or whatever. NASA, once it's built, NASA will take ownership of it and NASA will operate it. Obviously, with SpaceX being you know their supporting role, but NASA will take control and operation,
Oh,
which I thought
see, I
was
didn't know that.
interesting.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Trying
So
to remember.
SpaceX is making it. Oh, yeah, for NASA. Okay.
It's a one-time thing anyway. It's not like SpaceX is getting
Mhm.
it back. It's
It's
going to be
true.
deorbited with the space station. Um, so yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll move on a little bit here to the next topic. Where we at on time? That was about 30 minutes. Wow, I took way more longer than I thought on that. So
It's a
the
cool
next thing,
topic.
it is a neat topic. It's a sad topic, and
Mhm.
it's we all have to come to terms with it. If it's like death, death comes for everybody, and the same thing for space stations. But hopefully by that time we'll have other um, commercially ideally operated space stations, active and not struggling. Ideally, I don't think we'll have dozens, but maybe one or two would be nice. They won't be as elegant as the space shuttle, as the space station. And that's the thing. The space station, it'll be one of the lasting. It's one of the lasting big legacies of the space shuttle. And when that goes, actually, the entire duration of the space shuttle program operational phase will have been shorter than the entire operational phase of the International Space Station, which is kind of crazy to think about. Space shuttle operated for 30 years. ISS will have operated, assuming it's deorbited in 2030, for 32 years. Of course, that doesn't count development costs and development time and all that stuff. But yeah. So moving on to the aging space station, they had a spacewalk this week, US EVA 90. They were planning on going out the airlock to collect a radio frequency group. If I'm trying to remember what we talked about last time, they were going to collect a radio frequency group, basically an electronics box that failed. So they were going to bring it back down to the ground to repair, and they were going to swab a bunch of areas around the space station to check for microbial growth in the vacuum of space. I'm sure they were checking for other things too, like buildup of contaminants and whatnot. But about So I'll actually just play the highlights here. I actually have somebody pulled up a highlight video. Because Melody, did you hear any of this, or you just heard from
Yeah, I
from
saw it
me?
on Twitter. Yeah.
Okay,
Well, no,
so
I saw it on Twitter or X.
I'll put that. You can hear some of the stuff here, and I'll go over what you're hearing as soon as I get it pulled up. There you go, full screen. There we go. Okay, so here we are.
Stow the SCU in its pouch.
So what happened? Where they're at now in the spacewalk? They're in their spacesuit. They're in the airlock. The airlock's closed.
Mhm.
They're fully depressurized, and now they've switched to battery power, and they're getting ready to take off a couple of umbilicals. One of those umbilicals is for, I think, keeping the coolant in the spacesuit topped off, and I believe this is it is definitely water. It's coolant. I believe it's for the coolant garment that they wear, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. There might be other reasons to have water there, and for cooling on the space station, but in particular, the astronauts have a coolant garment, and they have to have a water storage area there and make sure it's all topped off. Again, if I'm wrong, I will correct it in the description. But either way, it was a water leak. When it was Tracy Dyson, the lead EVA, lead spacewalker, EV1. She pulled it off as she was supposed to. By the way, the hatch was already opened at this point as well. And so she pulled off that umbilical, and then here we go.
Hey, Steve, when do we go water on?
Once you get the SCU stowed and we check a couple other things, then we'll take it to on. But not quite yet. You'll get there.
This is a highlight, so they're going to jump a couple of times.
Gotcha. Okay. Just make sure I got my pouch.
Oh,
Water
wow.
flowing out of my SCU, guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of particulates flowing around here.
Yeah, can we turn the water off of the UIA?
And you can reconnect your SDU to your DCM, and we'll take a look at that.
Got a lot of water flowing.
Is it still coming out?
I don't think we can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's water
it's
everywhere here.
frozen.
Okay, let's get your SDU reconnected
I
to your
want to try
DCM.
it.
Yeah, there's literally water everywhere here now.
Steve, I don't think we should try it. I think we need to turn the water off. There's water everywhere. Not sticking out on my SCU.
And Tracy, the best way we can do
I
this
got ice
is if
all
you
over
can,
my helmet.
if you can
And do you have an active leak on?
Tracy, if you can connect your SDU back to your DCM, that's the best way to stop this.
All right.
Live use the airlock camera for you.
Okay, I'll stop it there because there's probably just a bunch more descriptions of what what happened. So they were describing that the water was going everywhere. Now, keep in mind, what happens when water goes into a vacuum?
Clogs out.
Well, it goes to, well, that too, but it goes to ice.
Oh, that too.
And it was a bunch of snowflake style ice based on what I heard. And if I'm wrong, somebody can, again, let me know in the chat. So you can imagine from this connector, and at this point, we don't know whether it was coming from her suit or whether it was coming from the umbilical. But so water was spraying everywhere, which means it was a snow gun going everywhere. It got up on her visor, fogging it up all over her gloves, which she said she could feel the cold in her fingers. So they had to turn the suit gloves up. And I think, I'm trying to remember which crew member went out to the one of the windows, and they could see a whole snowstorm coming out the airlock hatch, basically. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah. Granted, these are snowflakes, so it's going to look more voluminous, especially in the sun and all that stuff. So it probably wasn't a ton of water, but that's a good reason to cancel the spacewalk. But because of NASA rules, not NASA rules, but NASA terminology for how spacewalks are, how would you, just a fun fact, how would you determine when a spacewalk starts and finishes?
When the astronauts are ready.
Well, I mean, like,
I feel like.
is there, what in particular would if you watch something, what would signify the official start?
Oh, the hatch opening and closing.
That would make sense. That's how they do it on the Russian side. No, for NASA, it is.
No.
I don't know why this is. The hatch was open, but they technically had not started the spacewalk. But it officially starts when they switch their spacesuits to battery power. And it doesn't, yes,
okay.
and it does not end until they start, and I believe this is correct. Again, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. It does not officially end. That timer does not end, for the record, until the hatch is closed and they start repressurizing the airlock. It's kind of weird. You would think it'd just be a hatch open and closed. So because of that little quirk, their battery power were on, so the spacewalk had started, and they had to technically started, and so in the meantime, and then they had to eventually close the hatch, and then hook their umbilicals back on. Although Tracy did not hook up her battery, her suit back to her battery umbilical. She did not hook that back up to go back to station power because she was worried about water and possible shorting out. So she kept on battery power. But yes, they started repressurizing, all that from start to finish, 31 minutes. So it was officially a spacewalk lasting 31 minutes. Interestingly, not the shortest spacewalk in ISS history.
I was going to ask.
No, it is not. Now, it is probably the shortest one that they canceled or aborted. But there was a much shorter spacewalk, I think in 2009, by, the same guy. Oh gosh, who was it? I think it was actually the guy who happened to be on Capcom on the ground during this mission.
Oh, wow.
It could be. What's his name? Either way, he was wearing a Russian Orlan spacesuit. No, wait, maybe it was him. Maybe it was. I need to look this up. It actually may very well have been the same guy. So that Mike Barrett, who was also on a spacewalker to Tracy. The idea, they were actually opening up a hatch on the Zvezda module, the Russian service module at the very back of the space station, and they were opening up, I think it was the top hatch of the forward part of the module, and they replaced kind of a cover with an actual docking cone to make way for the Poisk module that was going to dock there later. That whole ordeal took 12 minutes. So that was a 12-minute spacewalk. It was an intro. It was kind of an intravehicular activity almost, because he was in a spacesuit inside and, opened the hatch and replaced the hatch and then closed it back up. But yeah, 12 minutes. Cool. So I think it was the same. I think it was Mike Barrett. I need to double check on that one because this is technically his first spacewalk with a NASA extravehicular mobility unit instead of a Russian Orlan spacesuit. So overall, it was his third spacewalk, and Tracy's fourth, I believe. So that leads. It sounds like, based on the press conference, trying to wrap this up here a little bit, this particular topic up. I think it's a problem. I think they said it's a problem with the umbilical itself. That when they pop, it's like a pop it on, pop it off. And sometimes on other hoses like that throughout the space station, they have not fully, sealed when you pop it off. But it's never happened with this particular one. So this is the first time for the umbilical that they used that this happened. But apparently for the type of equipment, it's not completely uncommon. So it sounds like they need to study it more. It's funny. After they got settled in, and everybody's safe, helmets off, they tried to replicate it with the same equipment to see if they could get the water to spray again. And much like when you take your car into a dealership to try to show them a symptom, it never materialized. Didn't happen. They couldn't get it they couldn't replicate it. So they're going to do some more ground testing and so on and so forth. So for now, that spacewalk, the tasks on that spacewalk, they're not going to be doing that for the next spacewalk, although they'll add it to get ahead tasks. The next spacewalk is scheduled for late July, and that'll be dependent on exactly how they go through the fault tree to figure out exactly what went wrong and how they can potentially prevent it from happening again. For the next spacewalk, they're planning on doing work for the alpha magnetic spectrometer. I think we went over this last week too. The alpha magnetic spectrometer, replace and relocate a gyroscope. Do some gyroscope work and relocate an antenna, and then they'll try to do swabs if they've got time. And it sounds like that radio frequency group antenna is still going to stay there. So apparently it didn't want to leave space station. These things sometimes have a mind of their own, like a diva.
Absolutely. I would know.
So that brings me to my next point. It doesn't sound like it's a spacesuit issue, but if you had to guess how old these spacesuits are, what would you guess?
Me, I would guess 80 years old. I
Oh,
don't
come
know.
on.
80?
The space age isn't that old.
Really? Oh,
No. The first
50?
spacewalk ever from a different spacesuit was in 1965. But these are the extravehicular mobility. Well, did I actually show you the video?
Oh, maybe not.
No, I actually did a video over that. I sent you a link. Anyway, you guys can watch that video. I'll share it in the description below. Let me write that note down to put that put suit video in description.
Mhm.
So if you guys can watch that later, because I did a really good video overview of NASA's extravehicular mobility unit. It's a little bit outdated at the very end when I talk about the XEMU and NASA's plan to replace it, because they've changed those plans. I'll get into that in a second. But the suits themselves are about 40 years old. They are
Okay.
they originally made 18 units, and when I say the suits, we're talking about the life support backpacks. I think some of the parts like gloves and stuff like that, they've updated them throughout the years, but the actual core of what makes a spacesuit, they made 18 of them, and they are down to 11. And they were upgraded for the International Space Station program, and they have a little backpack on top of underneath the backpack, called the Simplified Aid for EVA Rescue, or SAFER. And it's like a little bitty jetpack. So if the astronauts ever, when they're walking, they're obviously on handrails, walking around the handrails, not walking around, crawling around the handrails, but they're also tethered. Anytime they move to a new handrail, they take one tether it up, untether, and go to the next handrail. So it's a very methodical, you don't want to float away. And that's backup number one. Backup number two is they have certain stations where they have, it's almost kind of like an extendable dog leash, where they keep one of those on them at all times. And there are certain stations where they get to a certain area, they have to take one dog leash. There's not called a dog leash, but you take one of the extendable, retractable cables off, and you put a new one on to go to the next area. That way, if you do get off space station and you forgot to hook in your tether, you'll float away, but then that'll slowly reel you back in. It'll be very slow, but you'll be reeled back in.
That's cool.
But if that fails, their third line of defense, like something snaps, or that particular system fails, they've got the SAFER backpack, which is basically a mini jetpack that is very minimal fuel, just enough to get you back to space station. But it's got little arms on the side that pull down, and you pull off. You reach. You can't really see me here, but you reach onto your side and you pull off the little joystick and put it right on your front chest on the spacesuit, and it's got a little bitty hand controller that you can just do small puffs to puff you back to the space station.
That's so cool.
So those are
Is
the
that the
big
new
things.
suits?
Those are the old suits.
Old suits.
Those are the addition to the old suits that they did for the International Space Station program. So these were originally built for the space shuttle program in the 80s, or the 70s and 80s, and they upgraded them for the space station, and they are the same ones. We actually lost one during a actually, I think we lost a couple. Gosh, did they have them during? I think they had them in Columbia. So we lost a couple during the Columbia accident. There may have been one lost during the Challenger accident, and then there was definitely one lost during the Cargo Dragon CRS-7 in-flight failure in 2014, I believe is when it was. But either way, we're down to 11, and they bring them. They stay up there. They only have a few of them up there at a time, while the ones on the ground are being refurbished. And they have a bunch of different sizes as well. So you have the hard upper torso, is kind of like your chest plate, if you will. They've got several different sizes of that, and they got several different sizes of like the pants, the arms, and it's very, very modular.
That's cool. Yeah.
But it still has struggles with certain body types, which is why we're also, making sure things are up to date even more when for Artemis. But they're getting old and they're showing their age. In fact, the most serious issue with the spacesuits actually happened in 2013, I believe, with European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano. And he was on a spacewalk, and all of a sudden he felt something wet in the back of his suit, in the back of his helmet. Wasn't sure what it was, and it just kept getting bigger, slowly, but getting bigger. All of a sudden it started moving over into his eyes, and then he realized he had a big problem. He had a bubble of water forming in his helmet. And so he had to immediately get back to the hatch. Let me get rid of this here, so we're not just looking at that. He had to immediately get back to the airlock, because that water bubble was getting bigger and bigger. And in fact, it got over his eyes. It did not get to his mouth or nose, or maybe it got to his nose a little bit, but he was very close to actually drowning in space.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Yeah, I know. New fear unlocked, right? They have since mitigated they fixed the problem, and they've mitigated to where that won't happen again. They've added a helmet absorption pad at the back, so the water will absorb there. It's basically like a helmet diaper almost. So water will absorb there first, but if you notice it getting wet, there's a way they can check it. That's a sign that you need to go in. It buys you more time. So, but yeah, that was a very serious and scary incident. These suits are getting old, is my point. And the plan was for 2 commercial providers to replace those suits. You have Collins Aerospace and Axiom Space. Axiom Space is primarily working on the suits for the Artemis 3 mission for the moon. And Collins Aerospace was planning on updating suits specifically for the International Space Station. Unfortunately, it was announced this week that Collins Aerospace is backing down. So they're no longer going to be building those suits. It sounds like they realized it was going to... They were behind schedule, and it was more money than they thought was worth it for a fixed firm price contract, which, for better or for worse, understandable. And so now we only have Axiom Space building spacesuits specifically for the moon. It's unclear where we go from here. I'm going to guess we'll try to keep the EMUs going through the end of the ISS program. That's probably prudent anyway. But there's going to be a need for spacesuits for low Earth orbit. I was very surprised they didn't just keep struggling through it. So they must have felt like there was no market there. I don't know. It's a little baffling to me. I'm not an industry insider though. So right now we only have 1 commercial suit provider, and maybe NASA will have them do double duty, which will be good for Axiom, because then they get more business, and more business means you're going to get more donors for investors, not donors. So the other interesting thing is maybe if NASA decides to recompete that, because something similar happened during the commercial cargo program back in the early days. You had SpaceX and you had rocket plane Kistler. You ever heard of them?
No.
That's why they went bankrupt. So, but they recompeted it, and then we got what would ultimately be the Cygnus spacecraft, which would ultimately be built by Northrop Grumman. It actually was built by Orbital, and then that became Orbital ATK, and now we're at Northrop Grumman. Mergers. But
Oh wow.
But yeah. So yeah, that's how we got that. So something similar could happen with the commercial spacesuits. They could recompete it, and maybe SpaceX steps in, since now they are working on their own spacesuit. Granted, it's a little different than what NASA needs. With the Polaris Dawn mission happening in a couple of weeks, as early as midsummer, they're going to be testing their spacesuit, first spacesuit. It's a modification of their pressure suit, but with a lot more enhancements. It'll be umbilicaled, so think about those early space age spacewalks where they have this air tube hanging off them and they crawl out, and that's the umbilical keeping them to the mothership. But that's one step away from. Then after that, all they'd have to do is develop a backpack, and then you might be able to do things for the ISS or Axiom space station or whatever other space station, or maybe they modify that for the moon program as well. There's possibilities here. It's just a little bit disappointing that Collins backed out. It's funny because I think somebody commented, I forgot who it was. Somebody was joking that, yeah, I had a person comment, well, why don't they just get the guys who made the original Apollo suits to make the Apollo suits? Well, ILC Dover and all that stuff, they all merged into Collins Aerospace, so it's kind of the same people. So
Nice.
yeah.
The
So
SpaceX, do their spacesuits have jetpacks?
no, not right now. Will they? Probably.
Not right now.
Maybe. Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe. There's a lot unknown about a lot of that stuff. But the spacesuit they're currently developing will only be umbilicaled. They'll basically think of a solo Dragon mission, and the top hatch where they normally dock to the space station, that they'll actually depress the whole vehicle. Everybody will obviously be in these spacesuits, and they'll open the hatch, and then they'll go out. Two of them will go out and do several things out on the first private spacewalk, and that'll be happening in a month or so.
Oh wow!
So that's kind of neat. I'm kind of going off of weird tangents, but they're all kind of connected. So, so yeah, I think that's the bulk of what's going on the space station with the coolant link, showing their age, and as well as Collins Aerospace, dropping out. They'll still be supporting the current EMU suits, but yeah, it's a little bit sad. Part of me wonders if certain aspects of, we're obviously trying to replicate commercial crew and cargo with everything else in low Earth orbit, and it's too early to tell because right now we all have rose-colored glasses right now, like the height of the Apollo program. At some point, reality is going to come crashing back down because reality always wins, and maybe that reality, and we just don't know yet, maybe that reality is low Earth orbit isn't really ready for full commercialization yet, and will still require heavy government subsidy. Food for thought. Maybe another topic for another day, but it's, or I'm just being a little overly dramatic. So, I mean, SpaceX is, say what you want about Elon Musk, and I don't want to talk about Elon Musk, but SpaceX as a company has been doing great things. But they're really there's a few others that are a lot smaller than them, but they're the only big one that seems to be keen on pushing the needle forward. And somebody commented on to me once saying, well, it's not free, and they're absolutely right. It's not free to push the needle forward, and if somebody's not paying for it, I get it, but that's part of. If you just want to be a government customer, I understand that. But when you're going for a commercial suit contract, I just feel like they should have understood, the implication of what that meant.
Yeah, the fine print.
And maybe they were just hoping that NASA would be the only customer they'd ever need. Who knows? Who knows? I'm not on their board meeting. And this is not a criticism of Collins Aerospace necessarily, and it's not a fanboyish notion toward SpaceX either. SpaceX has its own problems. But so yeah, I have written on my notes here, why does it seem like legacy aerospace companies aren't interested in moving the needle for space exploration unless NASA is footing the full bill plus more? I mean, maybe the reality is we're not ready. I don't know. That kind of brings a little bit of a downer to that conversation. Let me know in the comments below if I'm way off base, or if you think I'm right, or gosh, I hope I'm wrong personally. Just let me know in the comments below whether you think low Earth orbit is ready for commercialization, or even beyond low Earth orbit with the commercial lunar payload services program with commercial cargo landers. That's a whole nother topic too. So we are an hour into this podcast, and rather than spacing out further and going on to something else and keeping on this topic, I think we should move on, unless you have anything else to add.
Nope. I don't know enough about that to add. I think you said it all.
Well, you're welcome to ask questions too. So,
Absolutely.
So moving on to Starliner update, because I think that's important to do. So NASA had a teleconference on Friday, which was kind of a weird teleconference. It was a combination of, hey, we're going to talk, have a bunch of people here to talk about Starship and its someday return from space, the deorbit vehicle announcement, as well as the spacesuit issue. And we're all going to do it in our normal teleconference in an hour. And I think that made the media a little bit upset that all three of those should have been separate conferences, and probably, but it was Friday, and I think NASA just wanted to get it over with. At the same time, they wanted to correct the record about a bunch of the, and I'm sure the stories were written fine. I haven't read all the stories, but a lot of, and like we talked about last week, all the Starliner crew is stuck at the space station, when in reality they're not. They're not stuck. And really, at least one of the Boeing managers called the media. They were polite about it. It's not like they said, hey, "Shame on you, media." That would you don't want to make an enemy out of the media, to be fair. But at the same time, you don't want to make an enemy out of NASA when it comes to reporting on space. It's kind of a there's an equilibrium there. NASA shouldn't get away with anything, or Boeing for that matter, but you should also be responsible. But basically, all the headlines of Starliner crew stuck, just variations of that headline. I think it just got to one of the Boeing managers because it's apparently affecting the morale at Boeing, because they feel, according to the teleconference, they feel that the test mission is going very well. Especially for a test mission. They've got some problems, but they're understanding these problems and they're getting through them. And
I feel like that's what a test mission is.
It's exactly
all about.
That's exactly right. One of the, in fact, I don't even know if I have it queued up. Let's see if I can play it here. Is it here? Actually, I'll play this one. This one was just, I don't know this guy. It says he's from National Public Radio, which surprises me. Let me pull this up here. Where is this here? Is it this one? Yes. So this is halfway through the Q&A for those who want to know. Halfway through the Q&A for things. And after the Boeing said, hey, you guys need to cool it on these headlines. We're not stuck. Here's the deal. And I'll re-explain the deal here in a second too. The media sometimes justifiably, pushed back. They're like, well, some of and they weren't just nobody media members too. These were like professional, like usually pretty good, fact-based media members, basically saying, well, you guys haven't been very open about things, you guys being Boeing. And that's true. Boeing and NASA have been very quiet about what's going on about these issues. To a point. I personally thought I understood it fine, but apparently some members of the media haven't understood it, and maybe they're just trying to better understand the situation. So I don't know what's going through their minds. But this particular person from the media, which I'll play, I thought was way out of line, and it just goes into a lot of the whole hate that Starliner is getting. I mean, there's a lot to criticize about the Starliner program, but this is a little too much. And I'll play it here. Let me know if you can hear it.
Field at National Public Radio.
Yeah. Oh, let me back it up.
And our next question is from Jeff Bloomfield at National Public Radio.
Hi, guys. Thanks for doing this call. First of all, I mean, if you can't commit to a return date, you can't tell us not to use the word stuck. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But anyway, that aside, the big picture here is certification, right? Dragon got certified about 6 months after its second test flight. Boeing's already had to have an additional test flight. I can't imagine you're going to do certification in 6 months. And Boeing's hemorrhaging money. Is this the end of the Starliner program? Can we call it quits?
Yeah, I won't play the answer because it doesn't matter. But
I can't believe someone actually said that.
Wow. That's and part of me wonders if it was just the microaggression that started off by Boeing managers by kind of chastising the media for the misleading and sensationalized headlines, and it just kind of went off from there. There was also a presidential debate the night before. Maybe people were already a little bit on edge. I don't know. It was everybody was grumpy on this teleconference. It was one of the I listened to a lot of teleconferences, and this one was a little bit unusual as far as the back and forth. Again, nothing was overtly like, nobody was yelling, nobody was completely impolite. This was the worst of it, but it's like, oh, I was feeling a secondhand awkwardness.
Like you said, it's the microaggression, and
Yeah.
there's ways of putting things, and like bringing back what you said before, respecting NASA and just respecting your peers and your workplace.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like
Yeah.
he
Now-
was respectful.
Yeah. To be fair, it's good to call out NASA or Boeing when crew is lives are at stake.
But just to call it quits on a mission, that's insane.
Yeah, that one was a little bit. I don't
That's
know.
what I'm saying.
That was uncalled for. Yes, but in general, being hard on NASA for their communication strategy going on right now. And to be fair, in the last 10 years, it seems like NASA's communication has kind of closed up a bit. That's just been my personal view on things. For members of the media, they're very hush-hush on things, and they're using ITAR, which is International Traffic in Arms Relations. It's basically a no export. You can't export technology that could be used to make a bomb or rockets to other countries, and if it can, it falls under ITAR, which means you can't talk about it. That's a very simplified version of that.
I mean, this could be a perfect example as to why they closed media out a little bit. If they're not gonna be fruitful with their information.
Oh, that's part of it too. But they were way more open during the shuttle era, specifically the end of the shuttle era, as far as media access. So it's just kind of, you see some of these legacy reporters who have been around for that long, and you can kind of see the change in tone. Is it a bad thing? I don't know, but it does make getting information a little bit harder sometimes. But two sides of the same coin, you kind of have to be a little nice too. But you can't be so nice as to just reprint their press release, because that's not reporting. So I get it. It's a hard job. Reporting is a hard job, but have a little respect. That one in particular was not very respectful, I don't think. Maybe if he ever listens to this and wants to come on and give me his reasons why, he won't. I don't know. I don't know him.
He can talk to me.
Yeah, sure. He's probably a nice guy. He probably just having a bad day. But I was just
Drink your
kind of
hot chocolate.
yeah. So, but yeah, the Starliner hate is just baffling to me. So that's one of the things I want to talk about in the long form video that I'm working on. But
Yeah, I see it all over my media too, and I don't understand.
it's easy, and people want there to be a problem because it's easy to hit on Boeing, because Boeing is having a really bad couple of years.
Yeah, but
So
there's a difference between Boeing and then Boeing Space.
absolutely.
A little bit,
A
what I
little
mean?
bit, but there's still upper management that's the suits can still say control things. But from an engineering standpoint, everything they've said about what's going on with Starliner, they had some what's going on now, changing course a little bit here. Obviously, we know they had the thruster issues. They had the helium leak before launch, which was manageable, very small, and they knew they're only going to be using the helium while they're in free flight. And then when they got up into space, there were more helium leaks, and then one thruster, I think, turned off ultimately, and I think they have that one turned off permanently. So 1 out of 28 thrusters ultimately did not work, which is not bad. That's why you have redundant systems. You still need to fix the problem, but that's fine for a test vehicle. But once they docked, all those helium valves, they're closed. There is zero leaking going on with helium right now. It will only leak when they open those valves to use the thrusters in the service module. Okay, the part that does not come back home. And they have about 70 hours of helium available. They only need 7. They're good. They can come home whenever they want. Right now, they're staying on board because Boeing wants to better understand why these leaks are occurring. They said they have some flange and seals that they're ground testing at White Sands. They're trying to find the root cause, and they think they might know. They think it might be related to thruster overheating, and if that's the case, you just kind of tweak your procedure a little bit. But they need to figure that out. So they're currently setting up at White Sands. I think they're going to start next week ground testing of one of these engines to try to recreate the docking situation to see if they can make those leaks occur again. And the results of that will help them better understand the vehicle that's currently in orbit, and then they can verify the results of the ground test. They can verify those results while they have the vehicle in orbit. Those tests,
That's cool.
You can't do that if they deorbit, if they come home. So I'm glossing over a lot of the technical details here. Like I said, sometimes we're just having casual fun. Sometimes we're more hard-headed. This is hard hitting. This is more of the hitting one. But sometimes, where was I at here? So that testing is, like I said, it's starting next week. They expect it to take a couple of weeks. And that's assuming they don't find any other questions, that they want to have answered. So right now, they're probably looking at no earlier than late July. They didn't come up with a date, but they said that's what they're waiting on as the results of this test. In the meantime, the crew, 2 people, with 7 other people with other vehicles, are safe on the space station. So safe, in fact, that when another event happened on Wednesday night at about 8:45, I think it was Wednesday, there was a debris event. Specifically, an old Russian, it's always Russian, it seems like, but that's not to pick on Russia.
The flying debris.
The Earth, I think it was an old Russian Earth observation satellite, started shedding debris. It didn't, there was no anti-satellite test. It could have been as simple as a battery rupturing. And then spread a bunch of debris. But it happened below the space station's altitude, and it was close enough to space station and cause for concern that all the crew went to their respective spacecraft for safe haven, which means all the hatches around the space station were closed.
Even Starliner.
And even Starliner. And so all those hatches are closed. In case there was a puncture event, they have everything sealed off. Or worst case scenario, they could have come home. Starliner is a safe vehicle. They're good.
They even said if they wanted to come home right now, they could.
That's my point. That was a test of, effectively a real world test of that if they needed to. They were ready to go. They powered up Starliner. Because thankfully the debris issue passed and there's no problem. They're still monitoring the debris cloud. They might have some other issues, close calls in the next coming days and weeks. Who knows? It's a little complicated out there, but yeah, proof of concept. Starliner systems are working. I think they said they
Then they just choose to stay, right? Sorry.
Yeah. So exactly. They are choosing to stay so they can get more information, more data out of the service module. And you have 2 extra helping hands on the space station for science, because they're not just hanging out in Starliner twiddling their finger looking out the window, although that wouldn't be a bad thing to do. They are helping out with a lot of science and a lot of maintenance work that's getting done. They were helping with the spacesuit preparations.
They're probably having a blast.
They're having a blast. They're busy. They're staying busy. Yeah. Hang on just a second. Where was that? Did you message me or was that somebody else?
Might have been someone else.
I just heard it. Oh, it's okay. I need to mute things. So that little soapbox out of the way. I'm just trying to. So saying that they're stuck is completely wrong, and they clarified that to the media specifically in no uncertain terms. Although some members of the media still had questions like, well, if you're not ready to leave now, then why aren't they stuck? Which I don't know why it's confusing, but sometimes things are. You just got to keep repeating it. But that is the fact. That is what's going on with Starliner. And they basically said they understand it enough to operate the vehicle, but they want to understand it enough to fix the problem for the next one. That's the point of a test mission. So Starliner's doing wonderful. This is not me being a fanboy. I'm not a Starliner fanboy. I'm not a SpaceX fanboy. I'm a realist. Should members of the media, should they press NASA when they think there's a real crew safety concern? Absolutely they should. There are instances where media members realized hindsight that they probably could have and should have did that for Columbia, for Challenger, but it didn't happen. I mean, it wasn't their fault, but I think there was one guy, I think it was Miles O'Brien, that said, yeah, he was getting backroom information about that debris strike on launch for Columbia. That some people thought it was pretty serious, but he was at a press conference and did not press NASA on it hard enough. He could have, with his platform, made a whole issue about it, like some people do with no issues. But he didn't. So he kind of feels bad about that. And it's not his fault, but it is what it is. But we're not at that case for Starliner. So it's okay to be critical. We should be critical. We should be skeptical. But we should also not speculate and editorialize in a weird, I don't even know what to call it. I don't think anybody's wishing for anything to go wrong, but just kind of like, yeah, it's just weird. They're not stuck. I've said that a couple of times. I feel like I'm a broken record now.
Not stuck. Always said negative data or positive data is good data.
Yep. And a lot of this stuff is, there's a phrase, a lie circles the world more than once before the truth gets out of bed. And that's where we're
it's like
at
a
here.
telephone game.
Yeah. Okay. Was there anything else that we needed to talk about? I'm trying to think if I got everything I want, because we are over an hour.
Yeah, I think we.
I think I got the debris shedding. I actually honestly walked through this pretty well. Let me know in the comments if you think this has been the best one so far. And I am working on my ums. I know I say a lot. I'm working on that. So.
I haven't noticed.
Oh, today or in general?
In general.
I notice. I go and watch back some of these, especially when I'm clipping things out that don't need to be in there. I'm not completely clipping out, mostly the end and the beginning. I'm not like, I didn't hate that segment sucked, I'm going to cut this one out. So
It's relatable. I do that on Twitch.
I mean, I did cut out a segment that I felt like we started gossiping a little bit, and I was like, I'm going to cut that one out. It wasn't too much, though. I don't want to gossip. We're not gossipers. No. Nor am I a news YouTube channel. Although I will talk about the news, I will try to adhere to journalistic standards, but I don't consider myself a news outlet in the CNN sense.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So yeah. Any other things you want to talk about this week? I feel like I'm missing something, but we can always talk about it next week.
Plans for July 4th.
Yeah, I guess true. We are. What is today? This is the 29th, so the
Saturday,
4th is on Thursday. Let me know in the comments if you guys, and let me know you as well, Melody.
Mm-hmm.
Would you want to do a stream next weekend? Which is the week? It's what day of the week is that? That is, it's Sunday. First of all, does Saturday work better for people in general, or do they prefer Sunday? Because I think
I do prefer Sunday.
You prefer Sunday? Okay.
I do.
Okay. And would it be better to do it earlier in the day on Sunday? You like the evening? Okay.
Yeah.
We'll let the chat decide as well.
Mm-hmm.
But
pop off chat.
Pop off or in the comments. Just let me know, because there's no real reason wwhy this has to be Sunday night at 6:30.
7:30.
Or 7:30. Yeah. 6:30.
Oh, for
time.
me.
Yeah. 23. Yeah. We could do it at noon, but although that gets in the way of everything for me. But yeah, Sunday evening, if we do it Sunday evening, is usually the best for me.
That's good for me.
But yeah, this is also your guys' show. All you space nerds, it's your show too. Although they can also watch it. They can also watch it after the fact too. Sometimes watching live is nice. So yeah, the next weekend is the 30th is the 7th. Are you good on the
Yeah, that'll be
7th?
good. I'm good.
Right now, we'll plan on the 7th. It's the holiday weekend, technically, because let's see, I'm trying to remember how the government does this. I don't work for the government. I see the 4th of July is on a Thursday. That means government facilities will have off on Friday. So it'll just be a 4-day weekend for everybody. So yeah, if we'll go ahead and do it.
You're good.
It might be a slow news week. Who knows? Or then again, it might be a big news week. We'll see. We'll see where the
We'll
news
see what
the news
happens.
takes. We'll see what happens, and if anything, we might just be talking about random space stuff.
Absolutely.
Get some coffee. Get some adult beverages. It's like I said. It's a cafe style. Like it's the Carmen Line Cafe. We just there having some conversations. So
Should have brought a coffee.
I have a water today. I had
I have a
my
water
McCafe.
today.
I had my McCafe coffee, so I already got caffeinated, and I'm out of my Space Camper beer. So
Oh, the space camp beer.
yeah, so maybe I'll get more of that and specifically drink it only on the show. Unless somebody's got a
Absolutely.
problem with that. I'm not like advocating for alcohol. Don't drink if you don't want to drink, and don't drink if you're underage. So this is an adult show, not for kids.
Very well said.
Yeah. So.
I got all my whiskey lined up in the back.
Oh yeah, that's
so
right. You're doing a tasting. What's going
tomorrow
on with you?
night. Oh yeah, some whiskey tasting. With,
That's the scheduling conflict.
Yeah, the Quest Ends whiskey by Matthew Lillard, who plays Shaggy and all the
Okay.
Scooby-Doo, all the
Okay.
live action Scooby-Doos.
So you're going to be on Zoom?
It's a Zoom. Yeah, it's a
Okay.
Zoom. And it's a virtual taste testing. So he's
Okay.
going to go over all their products, their storyline, because it comes with a comic and it represents like paladins and like different like what is it? Video game characters.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then
So-
we taste test it.
so did
one
they
of
say-
one of their flavors.
So did they send you some then?
No, we bought like the VIP bundle where
Okay,
each
okay.
of their flavors come in, and
Oh.
it unlocked their guild,
Okay. Okay.
their little VIP guild, which is interesting. So,
Huh.
so
So was it a
very
situation?
nerdy.
So was it a situation where you buy the package and part of the package is you get to join the stream?
Yes.
Ah,
Mhm.
got it. Okay. That's still cool.
Yeah. No, I'm really excited for it. So we've been waiting to try them for
Yeah.
a couple months.
You'll have to tell me how it goes.
Absolutely.
I'm more of a rum person, but whiskey's good too.
I like it all.
I don't like tequila. I suppose if
Ooh.
tequila's mixed well with something, I would drink it, but
Mhm.
just plain, no, not my thing.
Yeah, that's
So-
like me with vodka. I can't do.
I could do vodka mixed with things as well. Most hard liquors, yeah. Anyway, this isn't a drinking show, so so yes, we'll plan on July 7th, probably at the normal
Absolutely.
time of 7:30 p.m. Eastern time or 23:30 UTC, almost Monday UTC. And if something changes, I'll let everybody know in the comments, in the YouTube community page. So I guess that's all the time we have for this week's Carmen Line Cafe. Thanks for listening to us nerds talk and have a casual conversation about spaceflight. Once again, if you've enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and give it a like, and feel free to share it with friends and family. It'll be on in a day or so. It'll be not condensed, just a little more chopped up to make sure it's in a better podcast format. At some point, I would like to get a little podcast intro music or something like that.
Mhm.
Still figuring it all out. I'm still not sold on using Discord for this interface. Maybe I'll try out something different. Maybe Restream or something else. But for now, this is the way it is. Let me know if you guys like the format. Yeah. One thing I want to point out is we're still hovering around 6,000 subscribers. And personally, I would love it if you all could help us get to 10,000 before the end of the year. Not sure how realistic that is, but 10,000 by the end of the year would be wonderful. I'm planning on, like I said, continuing these live streams as long as it makes sense. And I'm working on a longer form content specifically for Starliner, although my plan was to release that when it lands. So the release date is also TBD right now for that video, which is good. I'm still writing the script and everything. So I might need to consider some other videos to do in the meantime. I'm also looking at trying to work up and do some shorter, like you got short form content like shorts, long form contents like what I typically do on this channel. I'm thinking about doing some more mid form content, like 1 to 3 minutes. You know, maybe I can do a couple of news items throughout the week that they're not technically evergreen, but the last few days, so you guys can keep up to date with things. You guys let me know what you want, or maybe I should, or do you want me to just stick with the long form and then do the live stream every now and then? You guys let me know. So yeah, let's see. What was that? Where am I at here? Oh yeah, so yeah, like I said, I'd love to get to 6,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and if not, definitely by the time Artemis 2 launches. I think that would be wonderful. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for partaking and watching us talk about space and watching me make space videos. There's a lot happening in the world of spaceflight, like I said last week, and I love sharing it with all of you space nerds. And if you have any suggestions for next week's episode, especially if it ends up being a slow news week, let me know in the comments below. And once again, I want to thank Melody Rose for being a wonderful co-host. I appreciate her. Again, you can find her
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you very much. You can find her at Lil Nerd TV on what we got, Twitch, X/Twitter, Threads.
All the mains.
All the mains.
No, you got it.
Yeah. There'll be I think I have her information in the description. You can click on that and you can find her there. Go give her a follow. And we also have Brandon as a co-host. He is currently working on other things at the moment, and we hope that he'll be back soon.
Brandon?
And yeah, same thing with Colin. For longtime viewers, if they remember Colin, he would co-host every now and then. He's been pretty busy lately as well, and we hope to have him back sometime soon.
Let's go.
Yep. We're all space nerds here. We all love talking about space. We all have different levels of space knowledge too, and that's what makes it great. We're all one big happy space family.
Mine's level 1.
Oh, you're more than level 1. You're fine. Hey, you're at least level 2. You've been to these places.
Yes. Hey, I'll take that.
So, okay. Well, any more parting words?
No, that's it for me. Have a happy 4th of July, and thank you for having me again.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for watching. And as always, Ad Astra.
Ad Astra.